All right, here's a couple modifications for this lesson. This is 4th grade, Unit 3, Module 1, Session 3. And we'll start out by having the kids fold a piece of paper into 4 equal strips and cut them apart. One by one, just kind of like the lesson says, we're going to start out by labeling that first strip as our one whole. I'm going to make a big deal with the students that as the reason we made those even strips is because when we want to compare fractions, we need the same size whole. With the second piece, you're going to have them take their paper, fold it in half, talk about how to make those really even folds, making sure that the edges are matched up just right, opening up, drawing our line, and then talking about 2 parts, labeling those as halves. They did something similar to this in 3rd grade, so this is kind of like a reminder. You can say that. Remember, we did this in 3rd grade, and I would repeat this process with fourths, and finally eighths. I'll go ahead and label all those. I just got started with it. Okay, but you can tell the students that now we're going to add a piece to this that we'll have access to in our iPads at any point. And with that, we're app that you see here. So have the students add using this button right here, add a fraction bar. And you notice that my green tab right here is lit up. Have them touch that tab and it's automatically going to put a label on the end of these bars. So we're going to start out by recreating what they just made with paper. So we're going to have one part here. This is one whole. And you can use the color guide if you'd like, that is here on our, within our directions. We can use white, brown, purple, and green. We'll add those 16ths at the end. So we can fill this in. Actually, I don't really know that I would want to use white here, but we can use a color that isn't up there yet, maybe like a yellow. All right, so this is our one whole. Okay, then we'll talk about adding in our half. So when we press this button to add another bar, it's automatically the same size whole. I would remind them again how important that is. Let's make it into 2 parts so we can create our halves. We're going to match that up with our whole, and our color for that one was a brown. So we don't have all the colors here that are going to match that. So this part is up to you. If you just want to go down the color wheel however you'd like. The point is we want to fill in those pieces so that we start to see that it took 1 out of 1 parts to make this whole. It took 2 halves to make this whole. And I would use that. 1 out of 1 is about the only way we can say this fraction, 1 of 1. And here we can call it 2 halves. We're going to add our next bar, and this time we're going to make our fourths. And at this point, I'd remind them that when we made our fourths, we folded our paper twice, and it doubled the number of pieces. And now we're going to fill in all 4 of our fourths. Make sure after you use this color wheel each time, touch it again so it goes away. And then finally, we're going to put our eighths up there. Add those and color those in. And I would pause here for a moment with them and just talk about 1 out of 1 colored in, 2 halves, 4 fourths, 8 eighths, and each time we've created 1 whole. It's just the number of pieces that has changed. Talk about that pattern of doubling the pieces each time, doubling the amount of pieces. Have them predict now. What if I were to create another bar and I doubled the amount of pieces that we just made with our 8 eighths here? What would that look like? And hopefully someone will realize that that would be 16ths. And we'll place our 16ths up here. After you make your 16ths, this would be time for the students to then get to start to create some combinations to make different amounts, different fractional amounts. So in our lesson here, you'll notice the directions say, have them build and report equivalencies for 1/2, 1/4, and 3/4. So I would show them that before we start to move or rearrange, We want to keep the work we have right now so that we can use this again. So have them press this share arrow right here, make their own code. This is their own personal code that helps them get back to this point, and then take a screenshot of that to keep in their camera roll so that we can manipulate this now and add to it tomorrow, and we can get a fresh start each time. Okay, so for building something like a half, I would say to them, can you make a half without using the halves bar? So model for the students, if they realize they can make halves out of sixteenths, pulling down that sixteenths bar and duplicating it. Actually, they don't even have to pull it down. If they just touch it and duplicate it, down here can be their workspace, and they can show that if we take away, go back to my purple, they can remove half of those and show an equivalent to 1/2. And they can actually lay the bar over top of another to make that comparison. So you may even model bringing down this 1/2, oops, and then comparing our 8/16 to that. So that's one way I could make a half. Maybe they can touch on their eighths, duplicate that, bring it down. How could I make 1/2 out of eighths? Remove some of these pieces here. Okay, I just made two ways I can make a half. So I would give them an amount of time, and they can compare that to the halves each time. Maybe even challenge some of our other students that are cruising along with it. Can you use two different fractions to make a half? And they may realize that they could use something like an eighth with their sixteenths. So I can pull back up my blue and use my sixteenths. To put these together. Take away some of my purple here. Have them experiment for a while and then do the modeling with them. But if I fill in these two together, I can place those together and see that together with blue and purple, I can compare and make that 1/2. I used 4/16 and I used 2/8, and I was able to create 1/2. So I would spend just a little bit of time with 1/2 and then have them put their bars back. They can even put the code in now. So let's say we've got a really messy space down here. The students can go into their camera roll now, and they can pull up that code and type it back in so that they're back to their starting place, and then start to work to make fourths, and then try to make 3/4. So I would just have a little bit of time. You could even split up. Half of you are making fourths, half of you are making halves, and then everyone work on 3/4 together, and then collect those ideas up on the board. But the point is that they're building them here to practice different ways that they're building. Okay, I can even just, another way besides putting in my code would be to slide that back up there, circle up the ones that I'm done with, and delete those. Okay, so when we're creating our 3/4, we can touch on our 3/4, double that one so that we have that to work with down here. One other note, you can also have them hit, if they need more space, there's this minus button right here. We can shrink this down quite a bit, and we have a lot more room to work with. The only thing is as we get into the smaller pieces, our fingers have a little harder time staying there. Okay, now on the lesson, after you've built those and recorded those equivalencies and talked about those, you can also share with them. I would just spend maybe 10 minutes creating those fourths, halves, and thirds. So probably here we're about halfway through the lesson. Then you can start to have them build a couple of these models. We've already done 3/4, but they can do 3/16, 5/8, and finding a couple other equivalents for that. Share their observations and the way they did that. Okay, then this is important that you get to working on a couple of these, um, a couple of the fractions where we are making improper fractions. So how would you make 3/2? How many of those half strips would you need? And then that's something that they can work on and see and build that when I have a half, if I need 3 of these halves, I'm going to have to color in 1 full halves bar. That's 2 halves. I'm going to need another halves bar. And how many of these should I color in? Just 1. So I'm going to get rid of 1 of those. I'm showing right here 3 halves. It was 2 halves plus 1 more half equals 3 halves. So that's kind of the modeling that you'll do. Another way I could write this then would be 1 and 1/2. So this is helping them see that relationship between improper fractions and mixed numbers. Again, a way to quickly erase all of this to help the students see that, circle up the area, press the delete button, and then this eraser right here that looks like it's on a piece of paper, clear all freehand drawings. Everything is gone. So that's a fast way to get ready for the next problem. The next one, I would practice a couple of these that are circled, 6/4, 12/8, and 8/4. So have them work with those and trade in and look at the whole. How many holes, write as a mixed number also. If you have time, you could start with a mixed number and make it improper also. Okay, this last part here would be a warm-up for the next session. All right, hope that helps. Excited to hear how that goes.